Data serves as the lifeblood of AI systems, whether it's training algorithms, making predictions, or informing decision making processes. The quality and security of data directly impact the efficacy and trustworthiness of AI applications. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Analytics Insight podcast, where we talk about the ever evolving tech space. And I'm your host, Priya Dialani. Now, as AI becomes deeply embedded in our everyday lives, the data fueling these intelligent systems become more valuable than ever. However, along with its increasing value come more risks as well. With AI systems having access to vast amounts of sensitive data for tasks like business analytics and personalized recommendations, safeguarding it has become increasingly important in today's digital era. But how do organizations do that? Maheswaran Shambhugasundaram, Country Manager for South Asia at Varun Systems Incorporation, will help us understand that. Hi, Maheswaran, how are you doing?
Hi, Priya. I'm doing good. How are you?
I'm doing good too, thank you. It's a pleasure to have you with us on our podcast, and hope we'll have like a more insightful discussion around the use of data in AI and the risks and implications around it. But before that, let's just start by telling our listeners more about Veron Systems, what exactly the company is, and the specialization of the company.
Sure, Priya. Firstly, thank you so much for this opportunity. It's a pleasure being here. So, Veronis is a 19-year-old organization headquartered in New York. We are listed in NASDAQ for over 10 years. We specialize in data security. I know data security is a very broad domain, but what predominantly we do with data security is divided into two, I would say. So, one is data security posture management. And what we essentially mean by that is helping organizations to know what data is important, where all is it residing, ensuring that only right people have access to information with right permissions. So by helping organizations get this visibility, we help them to manage their data security posture proactively and minimize risk around data breaches. And the second part of what we do is data and identity-centric threat detection. And what I mean by that is we help organizations monitor how typically users log into their environment and how are they engaging with data. So the way I would log into Veronis and the way I would engage with data stores in Veronis is going to be drastically different if my credentials are with a hacker or credentials are used by a malware. So we believe that if organizations understand information usage patterns and login patterns of users, they'll be able to detect suspicious activity and predict breaches before it creates a significant impact. So these are the two domains that we typically operate in: data security posture management, data and identity-centric threat detection. And we are leaders in this domain, and we are doing this for over 19 years. Yeah.
Great, sounds fantastic, Maheswaran, and thank you for sharing that brief information. And of course, we'll be diving deeper into data security and its role and implications in the emerging technologies. But before that, we would also like to know more about you. You're an information security industry veteran with having more than 2 decades of experience across a range of security technologies and processes. So, can you tell us about your journey till date, your role, your contribution towards the company?
Sure, Priya. So fortunately or unfortunately, I started my career in information security. So right after graduation, my first job was as a technical engineer, and I was trained on cybersecurity. I was doing that for a while, and then I moved into process consulting because I actually wanted to, understand more around how the technology can be enforced effectively for a strategy, and what are the important aspects customers consider when it comes to enforcing cybersecurity as a strategy. So I moved into process consulting, did that for about 3 to 4 years, and then it's been predominantly with cybersecurity OEMs or vendors. So I joined WebSense as I was the second employee for WebSense in India, WebSense, which now became as ForcePoint. I was there for almost 13 years. And then I also, the last part of my career with WebSense, moved into business development. I was heading Asia Pacific for new business initiatives at ForcePoint. Then I joined Titus to build their operations in 2018. I was with Titus, which then became Fortra for about 4.5 years. And now with Veronis, again, building Veronis operations in India. And it's been over 2.5 years now. And it's been a great journey with Veronis. So yes, over 2 decades of experience is predominantly into technical consulting. Technical engineer, then process consulting, then pre-sales, then business development, now into sales leadership. That's my career path.
Great, pretty impressive. But I'm not sure why did you say fortunately or unfortunately you've been into information security field, because I feel that you have like an amazing experience in information security.
No, because I didn't get to experience the other stuff, so I still don't know.
Okay.
But it's been a great journey with cybersecurity for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, definitely.
It's been a great journey. Had some great people to work with. Had a lot of great
Right.
mentors, and I think it's going to be an important domain forever, I guess. So it's great to be part of this, and looking forward to
Yeah.
contribute.
Yeah, I agree with you. And I was just reading this report that I came across, the AI security and governance report released by Immute, and it revealed that the attitudes of data experts towards artificial intelligence. Now, the report found that a majority of data experts, like around 80%, agree that AI is increasing their data security challenges. Now, although the report also found concerns about AI, it also found that many data leaders, around 85%, are confident in their organization's data security strategies and practices and believe that it will keep pace with evolving AI technologies. So I think it's on the both sides where we are talking about artificial intelligence is growing, but is also coming up with some data security challenges. But on the other hand, we also have to plan up our data security strategies that way so that it can meet the challenges. So it becomes very tricky situations for organizations, I believe, and with the influx of data with regards to digital transformation, everything going digital, it's definitely a headache. So I wanted to understand from you, what do you think, or what are your views on the current landscape of data security, and probably what's its role with the emerging technologies?
Yeah, sure. Yes, I think that's a great question. So, data security was always an important issue that customers were concerned about. But the attack surface around data is changing, and I think it's going to be changing continuously. So, it's important for organizations to stay relevant. So, when I say attack surface, organizations maybe like say 5 years back or even a slightly earlier, they were looking at protecting the networks, perimeters, assets, applications, predominantly because data was within these devices or within a specific perimeter or an application. That's not the case now with digitization coming in and COVID accelerating digitization significantly. Data is now everywhere and can be accessed by users from anywhere and any device. So the attack surface has increased significantly, and now regulations are coming in. Most of the attacks are now targeting data, and there are also some new tools like AI that business wants to embrace to increase productivity. And I think AI is going to play a significant role in enhancing productivity for organizations and able to get them better insight. So such new technologies are also going to constantly change the attack surface around data. So I think it's important for organizations to evaluate their security posture currently with respect to how the business landscape and how the data usage patterns have changed, and see whether the controls that they've already deployed is current. And when we as consultants, engage with customers and perform these data security posture assessments or AI readiness assessments, we predominantly focus on three areas here, which I think is important for organizations when they evaluate their data security strategies. One, I mean, these questions sound probably simple. Do they know what data is important and where all is it residing? This problem is becoming a big challenge for more customers, is because the footprint that data is leaving now for most enterprises is phenomenal. I think it's there at multiple places. Organizations are embracing cloud. They don't even know how many workloads are there with the IaaS platforms that they have. So it's very, very critical for organizations to know what data is important and where all is it residing. Because unless they have this visibility, it's going to be very tough for them to come up with any strategy to protect these crown jewels. So that's the most important thing. And the second most important thing, which I think is a big gap left by organizations when it comes to enforcing data security, is access. We see, I think you mentioned it, we see information being overexposed extensively. I'll just to give you some examples, Microsoft Cloud Permissions report mentions that almost 99% of permissions that are assigned to users when it comes to accessing data are unused, and organizations don't even monitor whether access permissions given to users on data is needed or not. Are people using it or not? And that I think is a very, very big gap. And based on various assessments that we did, on day one, when an employee joins a 10,000 plus user organization, that person gets access to at least 70 million files, irrespective of whether that person needs access to those files or not, just because of the way access is being provisioned around information for users. And this we call it as blast radius. So it's very critical for organizations to know what their blast radius. And what I mean by blast radius is, what is the risk that an organization has in terms of data breach or data corruption, if any user's credential in that organization gets compromised. And that we define it as blast radius. And this for a 10,000 plus user organization is around 17 million files approximately. So it's very critical for organizations to get this visibility and ensure that there is a least access principle enforced around data access. That's another important aspect which we think organizations need to measure when it comes to enforcing data security strategies. And the third and most important thing, which I think is going to play a significant role in predicting data breaches, is monitoring information usage patterns. How are users engaging with data? Because I think if organizations start doing it, they'll be able to predict a lot of breaches faster. Like I said earlier, I mean, if there is a ransomware threat, the way that a ransomware, of course, is going to be using somebody's credential, some user's credential. The way that ransomware is going to engage with data, irrespective of what that variant is, if any software or any user is encrypting, like say 100 files in less than a minute, it's not normal. So if organizations can understand such information usage patterns and get alerted, and if they are able to contain it, they are going to be preventing a lot of breaches and establish a predictive framework around data access. So these are, we think, are very, very critical. And if organizations have visibility to it, then some of the things that you like mentioned, like AI, for instance, right? So AI, I think it's a data problem. It's more than AI security. AI security actually boils down to data security, because AI tools are going to touch with data. They're going to interpret data, and they're going to put data into large language models, or LLMs that we call. And so it's important for organizations to understand what data is that AI tool going to touch? Why is it touching it? Is it really required or not? And if they're able to establish governance around it, they are going to be in a much better state to embrace AI tools like Copilot or any other Gen AI tool. I hope I answered your question. I know it was long, but I hope I answered your question.
Yes, definitely. And I think I very much liked your point. While we are generating a lot of data, but it might be very overwhelming for organizations when it comes to handling, processing, and storing their data, and how they can actually make sense out of their data, and especially with the threats and the risks that are revolving around data. I think, like I mentioned earlier, the real world of artificial intelligence is a very intricate dance between groundbreaking innovation and escalating cyber threats. Now, the same system that brings us predictive analysis or automated responses can become like a very formidable a weapon for malicious hackers and with those having some negative intents. Now, such a paradox puts a spotlight on a new frontier for the security teams. And I think when the exceptional abilities for AI systems are a marvel and can be utilized for protection, it can also turn into a hazard when manipulated to produce some deceptive results. So I think while we have more solutions around to tackle data security, it is still a very challenging aspect because it's not like a proven thing where you can completely mitigate or completely eliminate data threats and data risks. So it's just that how well you have strategized and what kind of specific tool you are using for it. So I mean, in the end, you also mentioned about some Gen AI tools and how you are affecting and the compliance and regulations around it. So we want to understand what are some common security challenges that companies should consider before deploying Gen AI tools. Because I think we are in this era where AI is there, but now we have Gen AI, and probably the next year we'll have some human AI or anything that might go beyond Gen AI. So, what do you think are certain challenges that companies should consider before deploying Gen AI tools?
Right. I think while we all agree that Gen AI tools are going to be extremely productive and help organizations to be much more efficient, I think one of the concerns that the security and IT teams are having, of course, there's a huge pressure from business to embrace it because business sees a lot of value out of it. But at the same time, the security teams are not aware whether they are ready to embrace tools like this, predominantly for two reasons. One, security risks that it can introduce, and the second one is privacy risks that it can introduce. So let me try to make this simple by just giving an example. When we perform AI readiness assessments, so we do a lot of Copilot, which is a Gen AI tool from Microsoft, which we believe is the most productive tool probably that's going to help organizations significantly. But when we perform these AI readiness assessments, I'll tell you some examples that we see, right? So what exactly Copilot does, and it allows user to put in a prompt. So based on the prompt that the user puts in, the Gen AI tool is going to fetch data that it can from data stores it has access, and then give a response back to the user and help the user to interpret whatever he wants to much better and get much more insights. So when we perform assessments, we call this as prompt engineering or prompt manipulation, right? So we normally go and look for words like, so can you show input prompts like, can you show some financial projections? Can you show salary details? can you list the credentials that we have got access to? So these are some prompts that that we put in a GenAI tool, and you won't believe almost every time when we do this during assessments, we see some very interesting findings because of the way information is overexposed. So we have seen instances where financial projections of an organization shown to a normal user because of the prompt that this user puts in. We have seen credentials of critical system being pulled in from different applications that this GenAI tool has got access and made available for the user because this information being overexposed to any user in the organization. Salary details of management, critical M&A information, patient biopsy reports. I'm just looking at different verticals, critical SCADA information, merger and acquisition related information, boardroom meeting minutes. You name it, like say, since 40 to 50% of critical information is exposed to every employee, and organizations actually do not monitor how effectively they're restricting access to it. We see information being extremely exposed in organizations, and AI makes it easy now for users to go and get access to such information, because without AI, it was not even possible for a user to know such information is exposed. Now AI is going to be making it more and more easier and help users to get such interesting information. So the first time the user gets accidentally access to such critical information, and then they become curious. And there are a lot of prompt engineering courses available for users to put in prompts to go and construct queries, which is going to help them get information that they want in a much faster way. So they're going to learn that and get access to information if it is not restricted for all users, right? And now you touched upon hackers. Just look at how easy it is going to be for a hacker to leverage these tools to go and get access to information. All he needs to now do is compromise the user machine or the credential of the user, and he's having tools like GenAI already deployed on a user's machine that they can use and go and perform searches across enterprise data stores to which a GenAI tool is going to connect. And this is the concern that organizations are having. And when we perform these assessments, we show these risks for organizations, and they're really concerned on how are they going to control it, right? So I think it's important when organizations are looking at creating strategies for AI. The most important thing that they need to know is why is that AI tool going to be used? What is the actual outcome that the AI tool is going to be providing for businesses? Right? Based on that, what all data stores it needs to connect, and what credentials it needs to use to connect to it, and then decide appropriate access controls, enforce access controls around it, and ensure that the AI tool is only getting data that it's supposed to. And if it's required, it has to anonymize data before it goes into an LLM, like especially regulatory information and things like that. And then I think they are going to be in a much better state. So I would recommend, and especially if organizations are going to embrace GenAI, it's important to perform AI readiness assessments and leverage technologies like, say, Varun, for instance, have a lot of automated controls to provide this visibility and remediate risks of information overexposure. So I think it's critical for organizations to get that visibility, ensure that they are having visibility on the risk, have a plan to mitigate the risk before embracing a GenAI tool. I hope I answered your question, Priya.
Yeah, you definitely did, Maheswaran. And yes, it's very important that organizations need to have a AI readiness assessment plan because the journey of AI seems very exciting, and the organizations are excited to deploy any AI project or a solution, but it is also filled with similar challenges and complexities as well. So it's very important as to they understand what are the different objectives they're trying to achieve with AI, and also the risks that can come with it, and then properly ensure the deployment and the integration. And I think with like a very solid risk management strategy, they can navigate this entire AI journey with much confidence, and they can seize on the right opportunities while they're also prepared to tackle the risk that might come up. So just wanted to understand, can you share some success stories or case studies where Veronis has significantly improved client operations?
Yeah, so I'll share a case study of on we helping customers to embrace GenAI from start to end, right? It took approximately about 60 days. It was a 10,000 plus user organization, a financial institution in Asia Pacific. So when we looked at solving the AI problem for that, like I said, we tried to understand what was the objective of their using AI. So it was for one of the businesses that are required to access specific file types in a data store. I'm not sharing details, right? So we understood this requirement, and through our technology, we helped them to get visibility that on that data store, there were about approximately, I'll share this case study with you. There's a consumable slide, so you can also refer to it later. But it was almost about 1 million files that is of interest for this business was available in that data store. And we gave that visibility first. And we said out of those million files, 120,000 files approximately were having regulatory information. So we gave that visibility of for that specific AI use case. There are 1 million files that the AI is going to touch, AI application is going to touch. Out of this, 120,000 files are sensitive. So that's the first visibility that we provided. And we got into a discussion, understood how are we going to mitigate this risk. Then the first thing that they said is anything that's regulatory and anything that is exposed to all users, they wanted to mitigate the risk around such information before even embracing AI. So all those 120,000 files, they didn't want the AI tool to even touch it. So the AI tool should not be doing any analysis on the regulatory information that's there in the data store because they had regulatory compliance issues and some contractual obligations with their customers to ensure that they don't touch that data. So that was the first use case. So we helped to ensure that that AI application that's going to be used by that business does not have access to any regulatory information on the data store. So that was done automatically through our platform. So 120,000 files which had regulatory information, the organization was sure that the AI application is not going to touch because access control was enforced automatically. And then this business function had about approximately, I think 700 users. Out of that, only 100 users required to access about 50,000 files, which are very, very critical. And that AI tool that these users are going to be using needs to touch about approximately 50,000 files. Other users should not touch those files. So the next thing that we did was for those 100 users alone, we gave access to 50,000 files and the other users did not have access to it. And we were able to get this thing done in about 30 days with zero help desk tickets because when we look at understanding which all users have got access to it, we also see which are the users who are actually accessing with the permission that's given to them. If nobody is accessing that data, even though they have permission, we have a way to automatically remediate that overexposure risk and enforce access control. We call them as robots that are built into our platform. And we were able to get it done in approximately 45 to 50 days with zero help desk tickets raised. And then that particular business function embraced AI on that specific data store. And now we are in the journey of expanding the AI use cases for other business functions in other data stores. So what we recommend is, again, since organizations would have huge volumes of data, instead of boiling down the ocean, they can start with such simple use cases, critical AI use cases, start with the most important information. Typically, this would be 10%. And if organizations address risk around this 10% of information and use cases, they would be able to prevent 90% of risk around AI or data security risk, etc. So we recommend organizations to start small, focus on the key use cases, and understand what information is sensitive for that use case, understand any information overexposure risk, automatically remediate them, and then I think they'll be in a much better state to embrace AI securely.
Great. Yeah, I think that is quite impressive, Maheswaran. Thank you for sharing that case study with us and our listeners. And yes, I think you rightly mentioned that it's important to start with some small activities that can help them mitigate those challenges. But on the other hand, while we understand and we are or organizations can be prepared to address some of the issues, I think it's very important that the AI decisions are not just accurate and beneficial, but they're more transparent and trustworthy as well. So can you just give like quick or best practices that organizations should consider for a very secure deployment?
Yeah, I think most of these vendors have something called a master services agreement, and so organizations, what they need to do is like look at the people process controls that they have in securing information already, and also technology controls that they have already in securing information. And when they're looking at any third party vendor to offer security, especially AI applications or AI security tools, they have to just see how much of those requirements that they already have in place. They already have that in place for a reason. Maybe they have contractual obligations, they have regulatory requirements. So they need to see how much of these are getting extended to extended by the vendor, and they should have the transparent discussion. And most vendors are giving that information transparently to their prospects and customers, right? So say for instance Varonis, we have all of these documented in our own website, like varonis.com/trust, where we help customers to understand what are the security controls do we have in place, what are the privacy controls do we have in place, what all compliance certifications have we done and that we adhere to, what is our responsible AI framework that we commit to our customers and prospects. So I think it's important for organizations to have this discussion before choosing the technology, ensure that all people process technology controls that they want from these vendors are already available, rather than an afterthought. And that is being offered by most vendors. And I think it's important for organizations to have these discussions proactively and ensure all such risks are addressed.
Yeah, true. I definitely agree with you, and I think there's a lot more to come with the evolving age of AI. But I just wanted to touch upon on an aspect that you mentioned in earlier of your responses, like the compliance and regulations. I think they play a very crucial role in data security and in the overall AI systems as well. And I think there's an increasing push for regulations that ensure AI systems are used ethically and in a manner that respects human right and does not lead to discrimination and unfairness. So these regulations can influence how AI models are developed and trained. Now, for example, AI systems must be designed to avoid bias, which can be introduced into a system via the data it is trained on. So I think these are all interconnected. So I just wanted to, like, we know that regulations and compliance is really important. But I want to know from you, or if you can highlight the significance of compliance and governance considerations and as to why organizations should duly follow them.
Yeah, it's critical because one, there are industry regulations and then government regulations, especially around privacy. I think once organizations are looking at embracing AI, for instance, they have to ensure that the AI tool that they're looking at adheres to these regulations. For instance, I mean, if an AI tool is developed to analyze customer data, and say, for instance, there are privacy regulations that mandate that customer data is used for appropriate reasons and only with consent. They have to just check if the AI tool, before fetching that data for analytics, have they obtained consent from the customer to use that data. And they also have to be concerned about certain other clauses from privacy, like right to erasure, right to information. So if a consumer wants to know what all data are they storing about them, and if they want to delete it, so organizations need to find a way to ensure that once such request comes in, they're able to go and delete that information, even if it's already gone into an LLM from AI. So that's why I said it's very, very important to see if an AI tool is going to touch PII, because privacy regulations mandate organizations to take consent, to delete information once users withdraw consent. So all these aspects needs to be considered, when they look at tools like AI, because even without AI, it's tough to adhere to these regulations, but they're in a much better state to respond. They already know how to respond to it. But with the AI coming in, it's going to be analyzing all this data at much larger scale. And once data gets into an AI tool, how are they going to know what data is there? How are they going to know? How are they going to be sure that it gets deleted if the user does not want that data to be analyzed? So all these things have to be factored. And I think as a nation, it's also important for us to have an AI Act or AI governance framework in place, like the way we are trying to do for privacy. Because I think, like the way you said, AI, while it's going to be very of significant use, it also can be misused and create a lot of risks. So I think there has to be a law, there has to be an act. If we work towards that, I think we all will be using AI responsibility and get the desired value out of AI rather than concerned about what risks it can introduce for us.
Yes, I agree with you, Maheswaran, that we definitely need a specific AI act that will govern its usage and its implementation. And I think that it's very much important overall in the globe. And while in India, we recently had a DDP Act that was enforced to ensure data protection, I think it's very important that we have act around AI and its integration as well. Now, I think in the forthcoming years, data will surge in importance and value as well. The rise will definitely draw the attention of hackers intent on exploiting our data, services, and servers as well. And furthermore, I feel that the very nature of cyber threats is already undergoing a transformation, like we mentioned, with the introduction of AI or machine learning enabled machines, which are in a position to supersede humans in orchestrating more sophisticated attacks, making their prevention, detection, and response considerably more complex. So, one last question for you, Maheswaran. What do you see, or how do you, are there any specific trends you predict in a data security landscape? And how is Veronis positioned to capitalize on these trends?
Sure. So in terms of trends, I think we already discussed this one thing. AI ML, I think, is going to play a huge role in not just helping businesses to get more value out of data that they already have by providing them better insights, but it also has a huge role to play in securing data, right? So I think AI ML can be used extensively to protect data at scale faster and to also predict breaches around data. So I think AI is going to be definitely playing a significant role, not just in data security, but in general cybersecurity. I think regulations are, going to increase around data. more and more stringent regulations would be coming around data, both from governments and industries. I think organizations have to have a better regulatory framework in place. They have to be much better prepared to adhere to compliances from various industry verticals. So I think it's very, very critical. And thirdly, like we have already seen, there are going to be more sophisticated attacks around data, because most threats is all about most attacks starts with an identity compromise and ends with data exfiltration, right? The hackers actually don't we are not seeing a lot of attacks which is disrupting networks nowadays. It's mostly about taking data out. So I think that is going to increase. More and more new techniques are going to be used to launch sophisticated attacks to get data, to get access to data faster, and steal data better, and conceal how that information is getting exfiltrated. So these are the three predominant at a high level trends that I see. And I think if organizations have to be prepared to address any new trend around data security or in general cybersecurity, like I said, it's very, very critical to understand what's the attack surface and see whether the controls that they have deployed are relevant, because organizations might be deploying a lot of controls. One thing that we normally hear from the security community and also the CIOs is they are getting budgets now, but that's not enough. They're constantly asking for more and more budgets. So I think it's very, very critical for organizations to come up with metrics to see, are they getting returns to protect against new threats and to protect against a new attack surface, and the investments that they've made is it relevant or not? I think that's an important thing that they need to do. And I think in general, if organizations have controls around data and identity, while it's important to have controls around threats, it's obvious that threats are something that's controlled by hackers, right? So hackers can always come up with techniques to evade technologies that are deployed which can detect threats and find a way to get into an organization. So it's very critical for organizations to have enough controls around data and identity, because these are two core assets that they can have under their control if they want to. And when I say enough controls around data and identity, especially with data, since you asked that question, I think if they go back to these three simple questions and see whether they're getting answers to it. Like I said initially, what data is important? Where all is it residing? What all data stores have this critical information? It's important to get this information asset inventory. Again, they don't have to try to do this for all data that they have. Like I said, start with crown jewels, start with the information that they know is important, and get this information asset inventory quickly. The second thing is see how information is accessed. How much of them is stale? When I say stale, there is at least 40 to 50% of data that organizations have and give access to users, even if no user is accessing that data. And why should organizations give access to users if they don't want it, and increase their liability, right? So it's and data management costs also. So it's important to understand how information is overexposed, how much of that is stale, and ensure those risks are addressed quickly, and they minimize attack surface around information. I would say at least access around data. That's the second most important thing. And third thing is, when we look at organizations' security operations centers, right, they're pretty good in detecting infra-centric threats. But if you look at how good they are in detecting, we call it as mean time to detect and respond to identity-centric threats or information-centric threats, there is a lot of gap there, because again, of not having enough controls or the right controls to get these alerts shared to them automatically and leveraging automation to automatically remediate it. So if organizations monitor how users are logging into their network, what is their activity with respect to logging into different assets, and also correlate that with data usage patterns, we think that they'll be uniquely positioned to predict a lot of breaches. If they have this user data map that we call it as, how users are getting into organizations' assets and what all data they access, and build a behavior model around it, they would be in a much better state to detect suspicious activity and contain it. To just summarize, I know it's a long answer. It's critical for organizations to get an information asset inventory, have a least access principle enforced around those critical information crown jewels, and lastly, track information usage patterns around those crown jewels and ensure suspicious activity is detected and contained before it creates a significant impact. So that's the recommendation, Priya.
Yeah, great. Thanks, Maheswaran. And I think when we're talking about data security, it's very important that understanding these risks isn't about fostering fear or reluctance towards AI. Quite the contrary, it's about enabling us to harness the power of AI with eyes wide open, cognizant of the challenges that might lie ahead. And it's not about seeing, it's about morely seeing the entire board and not just some shiny pieces that AI is introducing to us. And I think with the right system and solution in place, it's more of like a crystal ball that can help you chart a safer course, allowing organizations to mitigate potential threats while still benefiting from the transformative power of AI as well as data. Well, thank you so much, Maheswaran. It was a pleasure having you with us on our podcast. I think we gained some more interesting insights around data security and the more interconnection between data security and AI systems, and what all things that organizations should do in with the influx of data and along with the integration of AI systems. So thank you so much for your time and effort.
Thank you so much again for this opportunity, Priya. Just one thing to summarize, AI
Yeah.
security is actually a data security problem, and I think organizations should, if they focus on data, they are in much better position to embrace tools like Gen AI. Thank you so much again for this opportunity.
Great, thank you. So, listeners, I hope you are well aware of these data security risks and challenges. And again, you can listen and view all our previous podcasts on Spotify and other leading platforms. Thank you so much.